At 2:07 a.m., the sound of splintering wood shattered the silence of Marcus Ellison's home. Rifles flashed through the darkness. Shouts cut through the walls. "Show your hands! Don't move!" Marcus's eyes snapped open, heart hammering, instincts kicking in. He wasn't just any resident. He was an FBI agent, trained to stay calm under fire. But tonight, even his years of training couldn't make sense of the chaos. Officers stormed in, convinced he was a suspect, completely unaware of the truth. Every second stretched like an eternity. Every command they barked threatened more than just his peace. It threatened his life. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe so more stories like this reach people who need to hear them. Marcus Ellison had always known discipline. Growing up in Atlanta, his father, a city sanitation supervisor, had faced false accusations, once officers knocking on their door at dawn, demanding answers that weren't his to give. Marcus watched silently from the top of the stairs, pajamas rumpled, mother quietly weeping. That morning left a mark. He promised himself he would never feel powerless the way his father did. Years later, Marcus kept that memory close. Even as he rose through the ranks of the FBI, cybercrime and intelligence, surveillance had become his world. Cases filed meticulously, operations executed with precision, every risk assessed. Fellow agents admired him for his calm under pressure, his sharp instincts, and his relentless commitment to justice. But even with credentials, experience, and authority, Marcus never imagined he'd face the kind of chaos he had trained to control. In his own home, the night had started like any other. Marcus returned late from a field briefing, poured himself a glass of water, and checked his secure communications. His apartment was quiet, the hum of the city outside his window the only companion. Reggie, his tabby cat, curled on the couch. It was supposed to be routine, a few hours of sleep before another long day. But at 2:07 a.m., everything changed. A violent crash echoed through the apartment, wood splintering, doors thrown open. Boots stomped across the hallway. Shouts demanded compliance. Marcus's mind went instantly into tactical mode. He raised his hands, chest tight, voice steady. He was an FBI agent. His badge sat on the nightstand. He said his name. He was telling the truth. And yet, no one listened. In that instant, Marcus realized that training, credentials, and logic might not matter. Not tonight. Tonight, he was just a man in his own home, facing the terrifying possibility that the world might see him as someone else entirely. Marcus's instincts took over. Years of FBI training drilled into him clarity and control. He raised both hands above the covers, voice steady. "I'm Marcus Ellison, Federal Bureau of Investigation." Badge on the nightstand. "I am unarmed." No one responded. A rough hand yanked the sheets from his body. Cold light flooded his face. Officers barked orders, clipped and nervous. One mentioned a possible firearm, another an address, but it wasn't his. Just one number off, yet enough to send armed men into the wrong apartment. Before Marcus could react, his wrists were zip-tied behind his back. Pain seared where plastic cut into skin. He was barefoot, in shorts and a t-shirt, utterly vulnerable. Still, his mind raced, cataloging every detail like a case file. 3 patrol officers, 1 SWAT helmet camera, no warrant, read aloud. No ID verification, no knock. 22 seconds from entry to hallway drag. The apartment was a storm zone. A voice on the radio wavered, uncertain. Subject claims federal credentials. Copy? Another officer noticed his badge. A brief, tense pause. Marcus looked him in the eye. "I'm calm. You're in my home." No acknowledgement. The zip ties were cut 6 minutes later. The first apology came 5 minutes after that, quiet, without eye contact. His living room was a mess. Broken furniture, scattered belongings, shattered lamp. His cat still hissed from under the couch. He scanned the damage. His credentials, commendations, and plaques lay on the floor. His phone showed missed calls, likely neighbors. He ignored them. Through the Bureau-secured app, he verified there was no record of any operation targeting his address. None. It sank in. They had no idea who he was. No warrant. No confirmation. They came in loud, fast, wrong. One officer's nervous glance revealed the truth. They were acting on a red dot on a screen, not verification. 1 second of misinterpretation could have ended in tragedy. By 3:06 a.m., Senior Agent Julian Carter arrived. No announcement, no knock. He slipped through the broken doorway. He took in the destruction, Marcus seated calmly on the couch, one hand gripping a cold cup of coffee, the other arm across his chest. The shredded zip tie on the floor told the story. Carter confirmed what Marcus already knew. This was not coordination failure. This was systemic negligence. The raid had been triggered by a GPS misfire from a private contractor. A discarded device had tagged Marcus's apartment. Protocols were ignored. Verification skipped. And above all, a black man in his own home had been treated as an immediate threat. Marcus's anger burned hot, but it was sharp, focused. He didn't need pity. He needed accountability. Every measured word, every controlled movement had kept him alive. But survival alone was no victory. Marcus sat in the wreckage of his living room, the cold cup of coffee in his hand long forgotten. The adrenaline had faded, leaving only a burning clarity. He looked around at the shattered furniture, the scattered plaques, the tiny trail of fear left behind by Reggie under the couch. The fear, the chaos, the humiliation, they were real, but they would not define him. He understood now that survival alone was not enough. One night, one GPS error, one misjudgment had brought armed officers crashing into his home. But the real battle was bigger. It wasn't against individuals. It was against a system that failed to protect those it was meant to serve. A system that assumed danger based on color, not context. Marcus clenched his fists, letting the anger sharpen into resolve. He would work harder, train smarter, and rise higher. He would reach the ranks where decisions were made, where protocols were written, where officers were trained, and he would ensure no one else felt the helpless fear he had just endured. He envisioned new procedures, rigorous verification standards, mandatory trainings on implicit bias, crisis simulations, everything that could prevent a tragedy like his own. He saw himself standing before teams of agents, instructing, guiding, reshaping culture from the top down. He would make accountability and clarity not optional, but inseparable from every operation. In the weeks that followed, Marcus channeled every ounce of energy into change. Meetings with senior officials, brainstorming sessions with IT and operational teams, and careful reviews of procedures became his daily routine. Every detail of that night, the misfired GPS, the skipped verification, the officer's assumptions, was cataloged, dissected, and addressed. He spearheaded new protocols that required double verification for high-risk operations, implemented rigorous simulations to prepare officers for unexpected situations, and introduced comprehensive training on implicit bias and situational awareness. Marcus's vision was clear: prevent mistakes before they could endanger anyone else. Agents across the Bureau began noticing the difference. Operations ran smoother, trust in leadership strengthened, and Marcus's influence grew not through fear, but through respect and results. The lessons of that night became the blueprint for a safer, more accountable system. Months later, Marcus stood in a conference room, presenting the newly adopted procedures to a room of 10 agents. The fear, the chaos, and the humiliation he had endured were now behind him, transformed into purpose and action. Marcus knew that while he could never erase what happened, he had turned it into something greater. He had become a force for change, ensuring no one would face the terror he had that night without protection or justice. For Marcus Ellison, survival was no longer the measure of victory. Impact, accountability, and reform were. And tonight, he felt, for the first time since that dark morning, a quiet but unshakable triumph. If you've experienced or witnessed injustice, share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so together we can spread the message further.